everyone, to the Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series where leaders come to share their perspectives on different leadership topics. I'm Josh Seldin, and today's guest is Ally Meyers. Ally Meyers is a workplace well-being strategist and speaker who helps organizations build resilient leaders and teams through her signature Flourish at Work training. Delivered through leadership development programs, event keynotes, and team retreats, her science-backed approach provides practical strategies to manage stress, strengthen resilience, protect focus, and create healthier, more sustainable ways of working. Ally is a certified executive and positive psychology coach with certifications in the science of well-being and the neuroscience of business. Her writing has been featured in the Boston Herald, Baltimore Sun, Orange County Register, and other publications. So welcome, Ally.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
Thank you for coming. I'm so excited to have you here, and I'm excited for everything you're about to bring to the episode and share with everybody. So I'm ready to jump right in if you are.
Excellent. I'm always ready and willing to share all of this information that I have in my brain here that I wish everybody knows and practices.
This is the first step to help take whatever's in your brain and share it with a bunch of other people. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So for everybody listening, we will go over the 5 micro steps to building a thriving culture. And with that, Ally, if you can just start off by explaining what those 5 micro steps are that can help us build a thriving culture. And in general, why taking this micro step approach is really the better option than this big sweeping corporate initiative that a lot of times we go and do.
Sure. Josh, I think we're in a place in history where leaders and executive leadership teams are really starting to understand the importance of well-being in the workplace and starting to understand not only is it important for recruitment, retention, especially of our younger generations, but just to keep people healthy, to keep healthcare costs down. There are so many reasons that we should be paying attention to this. But I do think often executive leaders think, okay, what else do I have to do? What else are they asking? It's another benefit. It's another perk. It's another everything. And the approach that I take is I think that at the managerial level, we have a lot of power in what we can do to create a culture where people genuinely feel cared for. And so what I like to teach people are micro steps. So I help both leaders and their teams weave simple things into their day, whether it's the way that they're working or the way that they're leading, to help lower stress and help us better manage the demands of today's working world, which is riddled with all of these micro stressors coming at us.
Yeah.
So that's just a little bit of background on why I take the micro approach. These small interactions that we have each and every day are the things that truly make a difference. You can offer somebody a benefit and only a fraction of your people are going to be taking advantage of that benefit. But the impact that a manager has on how they are interacting and connecting with their people and connecting their people to one another really can make quite a big difference in terms of how supported people feel. So you want me to go through some of these micro steps? I mean, I have a lot of them, but I chose 5 to talk about today that I think really make a difference in terms of how we can be better leaders.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think, like you said, a lot of times we take this big sweeping approach once a year, something to really engage people and make them feel valued and make them feel seen. And so I think if you can, like you said, it sounds like you've got a plethora of micro steps at your disposal, but the 5 that you chose, I think at least gives everybody an opportunity of how do we have these micro interactions and make people feel valued on a daily, weekly basis instead of that longer term.
Number one, that's very relevant in today's working world is encouraging focused time blocks. I think it's a really important thing. We are being bombarded with distractions. And some research that I find really interesting comes from Hungarian psychologist. His name is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I love saying that name. It's very fun. But he found through his research, he thought that the key to human fulfillment was rest and relaxation. But when he started doing his research about 2 decades ago, he found that what really made people feel fulfilled is to have these small goals and to feel that they're accomplishing these small steps forward, feeling like they're making progress. So he's the one who came up with this term flow state. And the way that we work today, we just don't have a lot of opportunity for flow state because there's something ready to steal our attention in this attention economy. So I think it's really important, not only for a leader to share with their team the importance of flow state and I think that he defines flow state as a feeling of effortless productivity. So it's not only important for productivity's sake, but it allows people to feel much more fulfilled in their roles. So giving people permission to block out time on their calendar. It's okay if you're not going to be available for this hour this week or a couple hours, because it's really important that you're making progress on those things that are most strategic and most important.
Yeah, it's important to do that. And then I think as a leader, reinforce that it is okay to take that time. And I think AI, the digital age, all this is helping us with that. I learned that you can actually have Microsoft Office do that for you. So they automatically block focus time blocks in your calendar for the week.
That's great. And protecting it. And
Yes.
as a leader, making it public when you're doing it, because the only way to give permission to your people to turn off their phones and to perhaps not be available for that hour is if you are leading by example. So I think that's really important with helping people feel productive and fulfilled in today's working world. So that's one of my micro steps.
Awesome.
Blocking out that focus time. Another one that I'll share with you guys today is normalizing micro breaks. So as we go through our day with all of the stressors and all of the distractions and all of the stimulus coming at us, it's the need to pop open that tea kettle and release that steam. We need like a cognitive break from the screens. So it's really important that you encourage people to take a small break. And probably the simplest way to encourage this is to systemize a system of meeting buffers. The way that you internally schedule your meetings, make your 60-minute meetings a 50-minute meeting and allow people the permission to take a walk away from their device. It really helps to prevent us from feeling like cognitively overloaded. And I think in today's culture versus, let's say, 20 years ago, when time spent working equaled productivity, it's not the case today. You get to a point where you're not productive anymore if you've just been in front of a screen hour after hour. So giving people that buffer to walk away from the screen, take a quick walk, go to the bathroom, get some water without having the screen in front of them is really important.
I love that for two reasons. I'll go back to the technology side. I've also realized that Microsoft Office can do that for you as well. You can actually set it up so when you schedule your hour-long meetings, it automatically schedules a 50-minute meeting for you. So you force that buffer. But I also love this because my simpler way to say all of that was I tell my teams we need a meeting palate cleanse. When you're eating, you're like, hey, I need to stop and take a drink of water and cleanse my palate before the next meal.
That.
That's what you need, because I found the same thing. And to your point, living what we're telling everybody, I'll tell everybody, hey, I was just in an intense hour-long meeting. My brain is fried and I don't have any breaks between the end of this meeting and the start of the next one. I am not going into that next meeting as my best self. And so it's going to be a detriment to me, either myself or the meeting.
Yes, you make such a good point. In that time slot too, you often can draw conclusions and summarize the conversation that you just had much more than if you go right into the next one. And by the time you actually get a chance to take a look at your meeting notes later on, everything's a little bit of a blur. So it really helps you to be more clear and more productive by taking those small breaks. And sometimes people push back. We need that full hour. The fact is you're going to fill every minute that you designate. So being a manager who holds that boundary true is a really powerful and really effective measure of helping people manage today's work.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely significant when you're going from a 60-minute meeting or whatever it is like that into a one-to-one or something with the people who report to you. Because it's one thing to not be fully engaged in a generic meeting that you're there with 15 other people that are really inputting into it. But when it's just Ally and Josh sitting here and I'm here trying to give you my full attention, but I'm doing everything you just said of sitting there, going over the notes in my mind, what happened in that last meeting. I'm not present. And now I'm doing you a disservice.
Exactly. So that's a really important point that you make. Another one that I wanted to talk about is clarifying after hours expectations. I use this phrase in some of my keynotes, and it's usually when I'm talking about how great flexibility is. We have the flexibility to work from anywhere today, which is an amazing gift that not every generation had. At the same time, there's really a dark side to that because it can cause the infinite workday, as we all know and as we've all experienced. And often people roll over, they check their email right when they wake up, and they're checking their email right when they go to sleep. And more times than not, it's not because there was ever an expectation, Josh, that they need to be on all day. It's just that the discussion was never had. Right. So it's really important. And I have this short little cheat sheet that I share with my clients where they can have a short 5 to 10 minute discussion, which goes through, okay, is there a typical workday for this particular role? If so, what is it? Let's clarify it. If I have the need to contact you in an emergency or for an urgent matter, what would constitute that urgent matter? And how should I contact you? And if it's not urgent and you just are contacting me off hours and I'm able to get back to you tomorrow, what's a reasonable expectation and agreement between you and I? And having that simple conversation gives people the permission that they need to be fully present for the people and the things that they want to be doing after work, which really gives you the true reset to come back the following day and to be your most productive and your most focused. So,
and you mentioned that before too. If you don't allow yourself to have that reset and you're just on all the time, hours on does not equal actual productivity. And that's exactly the same here. If I'm on until I fall asleep and when I wake up and I barely have the 6 to 7 hours, hopefully, of sleep to help reset, I am not going to be anywhere near as good the next day as I could be.
Yes. A few years back, Josh, I swapped my exercise regime, which was solely gym focused, to really trying to get outdoors more. I'm here in upstate New York. It gets pretty cold in the winter, but even in those winter months. And what I found is it's rarely all at once for an hour of walk, but it's in between those meetings. If I can just throw my shoes on and get 5 or 10 minutes of walking in between something, I can come back really refocused. So that's the way I try to manage it on the days that I'm working from home.
That's great. I think a lot of people have those options too. And I want to get back to also, before you go to the next micro step, something that I know you said already, but I want to reinforce with everybody is if we don't embody and do things as the leader, our people won't also. So it's great to have this checklist. I think it's necessary to have these conversations up front because we go through life with assumptions and we assume somebody knows and we don't talk through it. But I can go through this contract of expectations with you and say, no after hours, I don't expect you to get back to me. And then as your leader, if I say you don't have to do this on your time off, whether it's a vacation or after hours, but then after hours and on my vacation, I send you a ton of emails and I text you all the time at work, even though we talked about it, there's that subtle thing where you're like, I know you said it, but your actions aren't telling me what you told me.
Yeah, and I'm on the fence about that. I think if you have a trusting enough relationship with your people, I do feel, and this is my personal opinion, some people don't agree with it, that you should have the ability to send something without that expectation. I think if you've had that clear conversation, which most people haven't, and you say, have you ever seen the signature lines where people say, I work in a flexible environment and sometimes my best working hours are late at night just because mine are. I don't expect you to be getting back to me in that. So having that kind of conversation, I do think gives you the freedom to work when it's best for you and send those emails, even if it's not best for them, because that expectation has been clarified. But I understand what you mean. That's especially, I think, important if those expectations were never discussed.
Yeah, and I think it's an individual thing as well, like you said, because it's a lot of also knowing your people, knowing what they value, knowing how they work, because at least for myself, and again, this is Josh's opinion, I don't expect my people to work off hours on the weekends or anything like that. And I know my leaders don't expect me to immediately respond back, but at least mind when I'm sitting at night and I see an email come through and I know it's not immediate and I read it, it sucks me right back into work.
I hear you. Yes.
Right? But again, I think it's all individual. And the more you know who your people are and how they like to work, then set that up in a very
you make a really great point. So I'm going to go on to my next one so we can get them all in before we end here. So start each meeting with connection is my micro tip here. We are more connected than ever and less socially connected and more lonely than ever before. Study after study is showing this as a result of our online communications with each other. And I think it's really important to try to rebuild that trust in the working environment. As with many people having the option of hybrid and remote work, I think in the last Gallup Global State of the Workplace Wellbeing report, 25% of remote workers reported that they felt lonely the day before. These are some pretty important statistics that are really telling as to how that fabric of society, of social interacting, whether it be through community or through workplace, has really dwindled. So I think we have to be really intentional as leaders as to how to build up that trust within our organizations. And that's hard to do because we have such limited time with our people. So I highly recommend starting each team meeting with some sort of, you can call it a team building question. I call it a broaden and build question. That's what I teach in my sessions. Broaden and build is a theory that was developed by a famous psychologist, Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. And what her research showed is if you start a meeting by purposefully evoking some sort of positive emotion in people. So that could be something like, hey, does anyone want to share where they went for summer vacation? That would be a feeling of joy. It could be, does anyone want to acknowledge somebody who made their job easier this week? That would be a feeling of appreciation. But anything that can purposefully kick off the meeting from a place of positivity like that, it not only helped with team building or helped people see alternative views that they maybe wouldn't have seen earlier. And it, of course, because people sometimes share personal stories, it creates a little bit more of a foundation of trust and getting to know somebody that you may be able to take with you outside that meeting. You may have found a commonality with somebody because of the question asked that gives you the foundation to build deeper trust in a later conversation. So I highly recommend people starting with something called a broaden and build question. Josh, I hadn't sent this to you, but I'm happy to share my list of broaden and build questions that you can attach as a resource for your people to the show notes if you're open to that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So those are just some simple ways to really help connect people, build that trust right out of the gate, and use the most, it's only 5 or 10 minutes. Not everybody has to participate, but give people a chance to build that trust up that we're lacking in today's workplace.
The one thing I would stress with that, because I think that's a great approach, is I am a firm believer with what you said. It has to be at the start of the meeting, because I've seen people with that intention before, where they're like, hey, we'll talk about this. We'll build this trust, building this camaraderie, but we'll do it at the end once we talk through everything we have to talk through. And like you said before, we are going to fill every minute and we're never going to get to that. It never happens.
Yes. And her research did show that by doing it at the start, you are able to be better problem solvers. That is so much more effective than saying, hey, team, we didn't hit those fourth quarter goals. What are we going to do about it? But allows people to progress through the meeting in a much more open-minded way. That's a really simple thing to change if you're going to change anything in the way that you're leading.
Awesome.
And then lastly, it's really important, and this kind of goes back to the rewiring the brain, the neuroplasticity, to be sharing wins. Anytime you can share wins, okay? This could be a way, this could be part of your broaden and build question. Let's talk about what went well this week. That could be a simple way to do that. But what this does is it really rewires your team members' brains for optimism and for confidence. So often we're talking about what didn't go well, and we have a negativity bias, which means we're spending 3 times as much attention on what isn't going well and what didn't go well, where we have to be incredibly intentional to even that ratio out by purposefully sharing what is going well. And I think that this is especially, yes, it's important at the start of team meetings, and you can incorporate it into those broaden and build questions, but it's also super important in one-on-ones to kick off. I highly recommend kicking off every one-on-one with pointing out something that person has done well, or progress that was made, or share something that went well this week, or you pointing it out yourself. What this also does, in addition to allowing that person to feel more confident in their role, it also puts you as a manager, gives you the ability to put a few coins in your bank. That's the way I say it. build some trust in how you're interacting with that person, because the time is going to come where the feedback isn't so positive, and you've already built a really nice foundation of trust without having to do that sandwich method. I don't know if you know the sandwich, sometimes it's called the sandwich, where it's something positive, then something negative, then something positive, where that can be very transparent sometimes. But if this is a continuous way of, again, rewiring their brains for confidence and optimism in their role, then when you have to share that constructive feedback, it will be received much more positively.
I think this is a great approach because I'm a firm believer that we do such a poor job celebrating kind of those micro wins. And I kind of say it as we need to celebrate the journey and not just the destination. And today, all we
Absolutely.
do, yeah, all we do is celebrate the destination. And what it does is it gets back to your comment about bias of negativity, where I am not giving you any positive reinforcement, or we're not talking about any of the wins that you have because we're working on something that's going to take a year to go accomplish. But within that year, I'm sure there are little nuggets of feedback here and there that I have to give you. And so if you and I are having this conversation all the time, all you're getting from me is feedback after feedback and nothing positive until the end.
Yes.
And hey, 12 months of feedback and then one little comment of, hey, really great job at the end of this year does not
Exactly.
compute.
Exactly. Yeah, you know it well. And I think not only is this super important in terms of how you're leading your people, but just in terms of how you are working yourself. I made a change in my own life that was incredibly beneficial in those small time slots where, let's say, I'd be waiting for a meeting to start, where I would normally pick up my phone and probably scroll my email, scroll LinkedIn or something like that. I made a conscious effort to push it aside through the research that I had read and just reflect on what's going well. What are a couple wins that day? Now, did I accomplish my big goals that day? Most of the time, not, but I purposefully write down in that space that I have, bring to the forefront of my attention those things that actually did well, that I progressed, even if it was the tiniest bit, because that little burst of dopamine that you get really actually helps you feel much more satisfied in what you're doing, when even if it's the smallest of goals in the direction that you wish to go in. So it's really important, not only at a team level, but at an individual level, to be not only focused on the gap versus the gain, the gap, how far you still are from that goalpost, but how far you've come in that last year.
That's so important because I feel like we are our own worst critic. And even if we have a leader, even if Ally, you're saying, Josh, you really accomplished these things, in my mind, I could be like, yeah, but I didn't do this, or yeah, but it could have
Yep.
been this. And so I think that's so important, not only looking for that external appreciation, but our internal one as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So those were 5 of the micro steps that I teach, but there's a lot of other things that I talk about in both my retreats and my keynotes.
I think those are great, and I appreciate you sharing them with us. And I am curious because you touched on this in the very beginning when we talked about generational things. And I know in the workplace today, we've got multiple generations working together. You've got Gen Z, you've got millennials, you've got boomers, and possibly others.
Yeah.
I love the micro steps, but I do see, at least based on my experience, where certain generations may view some of the micro steps differently than some of the other ones. How do you see people integrating these micro steps into organizations when you do have those multiple generations in there?
Yeah. So this is something I really love to talk about, Josh. And I saw that you had commented on a LinkedIn post the other day. I'm just naturally curious about the differences in work styles and communication norms that the different generations are bringing into the workplace, because they're so dramatically different. I have kids who range from 9 to 17. So I'm on that Gen Z. My oldest is Gen Z, and I want to make sure that I am really helping to develop him as much as possible so that he lives a thriving working life. So one of the things that I really like to reinforce with leaders is everyone is bringing different opinions, values, communication styles to the workplace. But there are reasons for this, and there are very strong reasons for this. And one of the keynotes that I do that's around managing generational differences really talks about what those formative experiences were in each generation's life. So what was going on in the late teens, when I say formative, late teens to early 20s, when you had your boomers, when you had your Gen Xers, when you had your millennials, and now when you have your Gen Zers. And when you take a look at your boomers versus your Gen Zers, there has never been such a jump in terms of social norms because of technology in history. And I think that I really encourage people, as frustrated as we all can get with expectations sometimes, I really encourage managers to listen to, like I said, I teach these workshops, but to really take into consideration the huge difference in how the skills in which each generation naturally built in those years. For example, Gen Zers, I've heard it many times before, they don't want to make a phone call. They don't want to have an uncomfortable conversation. This is a thing, and this is a social norm. You don't want to say it's a stereotype, but it has been proven to be a social norm. So one of the main reasons is that they're the first generation in history whose primary means of communication in those really important years were totally done through a screen, totally done through texting. Not totally, but the majority of their communication was done electronically. So you have people who are sending a message and then they're editing it and then they're maybe using ChatGPT. Does it sound right? And they are curating their communications. So now, if they have to approach a client who maybe is a little bit upset, they're terrified because they are completely not practiced in what's called spontaneous communication. So I think it's really important, one, for the people, especially the managers, to understand that a lot of this comes from the fact that they just never built those skills, and that there are some simple things in terms of these micro steps that we can be doing to help support them and to get them more comfortable doing these things. I think a big part of it is starting those meetings with trust building questions, ways for different generations to show their value and to communicate with each other and to see that everybody has something to offer. And I think it's all in how the manager creates that space in the front end of the meeting through maybe a simple question like, anyone have any suggestions on how you maintain focus in your workday? And having conversations, one may offer something to a different generation that's valuable, and vice versa. Your younger generation may offer a tool or something, an electronic tool that somebody didn't know about. So creating space for communication and trust building so that there's more mutual respect. And I think gaining a better understanding and being able to empathize with the fact that we're really starting from different starting lines with a lot of these skills. Yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it all comes back to creating the space for social interaction so that they can get to know each other and build trust.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it brings up a couple good points, because I do think that being able to build the trust and bringing this safe space where people can learn different things is a great opportunity, because there are things that the millennials can learn from boomers or Gen Z or vice versa. And the other thing that I think this all leads to, because you keep using the word understanding, and it is about understanding, where the leaders need to, one, understand where each person's coming from, but also where I've seen leaders misstep these days is that they don't seem to understand that there are multiple ways to get to the same endpoint. And so you have all of these different generations coming in, doing their work, and really, we don't need to micromanage how they do it. We just need to make sure we're very clear on this is where we need to go. And then I can have a Gen Z person get there a lot different than I can. And it doesn't mean what they're doing is wrong. It may seem different to me, but it is still just as successful and just as appropriate as what I would do.
You make such a great point. One of the most important skills of a manager today in terms of this world is making sure that there is nothing to be left for interpretation when creating those goals, and giving people the flexibility to get from point A to point B in a way that works best with them. Yeah. Flexibility is huge, but one really simple way to initiate some conversations that could be really beneficial to your team is to ask a question at the beginning of the meeting. What does flexibility look like for you? And what you'll find is people are going to say flexibility is being able to walk my dog in the middle of the day. And it uncovers what people's priorities are, and it helps them understand maybe you were drawing some conclusions about somebody's work ethic, let's say, and it allows you to further your understanding with what's important to them, why they do what they do, and what flexibility means to them. And it means something different to all of us.
I think that's spot on. And I think it's a great thing everybody can take away from this and start doing. I
Yeah.
honestly have loved everything we've talked about so far. Are there any final thoughts, final things that you want to share with everybody before we wrap up?
Well, I would say just a really great place to start is just with that opening question. It's such a simple thing that you can do, and there's nothing but benefits that can come out of better connecting your people. When you start looking at some of the challenges of the world today in terms of stress and lack of resilience, even with the younger generations, loneliness, mental health problems, it is all rooted in lack of connection.
Hmm.
And anything that we can do as managers, I know, is it your responsibility to babysit people and make sure that they're feeling cared for? No, it's not, but it really is a service to the world. You have so much power as the manager to be able to help guide people and connect them that I really think it can make such a huge difference with how you create the space in those shared meetings to help people feel more supported.
I couldn't agree more. That is spot on. I do want to
Right.
remind everybody this was Ally Meyers. I will have all of her information in the description area of the podcast, which you can like, follow, and subscribe to. It's on all the different podcast platforms that we have and on YouTube. You can subscribe to my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Leading Quarters, or email me with any questions or ideas you have for future episodes. Or if you want to get a hold of Ally, you can get a hold of me at leadingquarters@gmail.com and I'll get you both together. But as she said, we'll have a lot of her information, a lot of her links in there, including the broaden and build list that we talked about. And all of that will be available to you so you can learn more. I like to call these episodes these little teases and tastes. So they got to hear a lot of great things and they can go learn a lot
Right.
more after that. But I do really appreciate everything you've said. I had a different guest on the other day who really talked about in the age of AI will start taking all of the technical nuts and bolts things of what we do, and connection is going to be so important as the years go
So
on.
important.
And
Yep.
everything you have brought up just supports
Yeah.
connection. And so for you to come here and
Yes.
share all of that, I am very grateful. And I'm sure all the listeners are too. So
Great.
thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Josh, and thank you for providing this platform for all of us to be able to share and educate and make our leaders better.